a brief background now on Fire Marshal and Battalion Chief Ragusa. He joined the city of Glendale, the fire department, about 20 years. So it goes on that he's been serving the city for about 20 years. He joined as a firefighter paramedics, worked his way up to a fire captain level, and now, of course, is a battalion chief and fire marshal. He is a graduate of Azusa Pacific University with an MBA, Master's in Business Administration. And he was nice enough to, when we reached out to him, for him to speak about, because we just dealt, President Rick talked to you about the disclosures, the home hardening, the defensible space. So Fire Marshal Ragusa will be addressing about 10 questions that we have curated and sent to him that we felt it's relevant to you as realtors and to your clientele. But before I start and ask you to welcome him, I want you to know that the Firefighters Association in the state of California was instrumental for us to pass Prop 19. They were a supporter, they were an ally, and they were so because it would generate necessary additional funds to fight these wildfires that get worse by every year, basically. So with that, please, let's give Fire Marshal Jeff a Zoom welcome by going to your reaction button and pressing on the cloud. Jeff, welcome aboard, and we love having you here, and we thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Mr. Historian, and thank you, Mr. Bignati, and thank you for having me speak to the Glendale Association of Realtors. That was a very nice introduction. I'm not sure where you got all that information from, but I have a feeling that you know somebody in our administration that helped you out with those details. I am your fire marshal. I have been here for 20 years. I've only been the fire marshal for about 2.5 years. The majority of my career has been spent in the suppression operations side. So I'll get right into the questions that I believe you're curious about having me answer. And I'm also available to answer any other questions that I may not cover or offer a little bit more explanation on any of these. So I'll read the questions that Greg had sent me, and then I'll just kind of answer them, and hopefully we'll clear some things up. Most of these questions, I'm assuming, came from the Assembly Bill 38 that was passed in July. It goes into effect July 1st. I believe it was.
That's right.
Passed about in January, and we had anticipated this bill passing and going into effect. So first questions I got was, does Glendale have a local ordinance requiring brush removal or defensible space vegetation management? And the short and long answer to that is yes, we do. Our entire vegetation management program is prefaced on ensuring that our community has created defensible space within their improved lots. We also do it for unimproved lots through parcels, where we inspect those. We actually inspect a total of 9,000 parcels within the city, and we're looking to make sure that those areas that fall within the high fire hazard area, which is a state dictated map of areas that create the biggest urban interface threat, are compliant within the defensible space around their home. So we send out communication to the homeowners. We basically look for 2 zones, zone 1 to 30 feet, and zone 2, 30 to 100 feet. And we're looking for things that basically may seem obvious to somebody who's into the industry, but maybe not so obvious to people who aren't. But especially we're getting rid of dead plants, dead trees, dead bushes. We're clearing, making sure that the grass is not overgrown and it's cut to a reasonable extent, and getting rid of any ladder fuel. So that's our inspection program. That's what we do. That's what I oversee. We have 2 really good inspectors Most of you who live in that area have probably ran into our past inspector because he's literally knocks on every door as he's going up and down the neighborhoods. He actually moved up north recently, and we now have 2 girls that have taken over that program. So you'll be seeing them because we started that in April, and they're making their way through the neighborhoods now. Another question I had was, do we have a local ordinance requiring home hardening? So home hardening and vegetation management is 2 different things. Home hardening, it sounds like you guys had a little bit of discussions with that last meeting, but really has to do with more the construction features of the home and what you can do to improve it, and more hardscaping and things of that nature. And we don't have a retroactive ordinance, meaning we don't inspect for that. We won't go and we won't enforce any home hardening. We will give guidance, and we do a lot, especially with homeowners associations or individuals who want our guidance. But what we do have is we have a new construction that lie in the high fire hazard area. It's Chapter 7 of the building code, which requires certain parameters to be done if they live within that area or are improving a lot within that area. A lot of that has to do with windows, roofing, different type of non-combustible materials, but it is not retroactive, and is only when they require a permit for some improvement or if it's new construction lying in that area. So hopefully that clears that portion up. The next question, which is probably the most important, I'm assuming, especially when you're talking about a house sale, is how does a home property owner document compliance with our program? So there's a couple different ways. So if they pass an initial inspection, in other words, we go through their home, our inspectors are a little bit limited on what they can see for the most part. Some places they have a good way of getting to the back of the home. Obviously public property, we never go on people's property without their permission. So we have some areas that you can see vantage points is in the back of the home. We use binoculars. Front of the homes obviously is pretty easy because we can just walk down the neighborhood. If we go by a home and the home is perfect or meets our requirements, they will not receive a clearance letter from us unless they request one. If there's some sort of violation, even if it's a minor violation, they will receive a correction notice from us. And after they correct those, they will then receive a compliance letter. So that is one way. That they can prove that they have documented compliance. There's 2 other ways, and a lot easier. A homeowner, if they live within that area, they will receive correspondence for an online portal that we have through our partners. It's called 3DI. 3DI, if you are a homeowner in the area, they receive a specific PIN number. If they don't have the PIN number, they can call us and we can give them the PIN number, and they can actually go in online and see the fact that their property has been proven compliance for this year. Another way, and probably the most common way, and realtors can do this, homeowners can do this, really anybody can do this, is through a public records request. Public records request is free. It's through the clerk division of the city of Glendale. There's a couple ways to get it. The website on the city of Glendale's clerk has a public records request on it through the city clerk. You fill out a little form and it gets submitted to the clerk, and then they just email it over to us, and then we can create a letter of compliance and send it to whoever the public records requester was, or they can call them directly, the clerk's office. Numbers on the website as well, and they can put in a request that way, and we can provide documentation that they've been compliant for our requirements for the year. I'll move on to the next questions, but I'll pause for a second if Greg or Rick, if there's different areas you want me to.
Yeah, let me the Italian chief. Let me ask you, this compliance issue is very, very important because of our disclosure requirements today,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
The timing is very important. If one of our members and their clients are in escrow, requesting public records or going through public records is going to take 21 days at least by city mandate. So is there an easier way for us to get a letter of compliance from the fire department directly? Now, assuming you conduct an inspection and then you can issue the compliance, right? The 3DI, by the way, is it number 3, letter D and I?
Yes, correct.
.com, not .org.
Yeah, .com, but the website on our website, on the Glendale Fire Department Fire Prevention website, you can get links to all of these things.
Okay, so perhaps then later on, I will do that and provide that information to our membership. But tell me about the compliance. That's the part that we are really, really concerned about. Sure.
So, and I figured that's why I made a pause for this. The public records, I think per policy is 3 weeks, I believe. Now, basically, the city clerk, once they get it, they email it to us, and then we can produce it. You can also go direct to our website or our email address, which is on every single piece of correspondence that we send out to the high fire hazard area. It's VMP, Vegetation Management Program, at glendaleca.gov. And you can email us and say, hey, I filled out a public records request. We have a, we're in escrow. We would like to see if we can expedite this request. And essentially, we're going to get that same information from the clerk's office. And if we know, we check that email every 24 hours. And if we know that there's something pending for our community, we can always call the clerk's office and say, hey, we got this public records request, it's probably in your queue. We're going to go ahead and take care of it. So that's definitely a way to make sure that you get it before the 21 days. It won't take 21 days for you to get as long as we get it, it won't take 21 days for you to get a letter of compliance, assuming that your client is compliant with their brush inspections. It's a very quick turnaround. We can do it within 3 days, really. It's not a hard process for us to do. We just need to know that the request is there.
Thank you. We can go forward.
Sure. And that email and everything else is also on our fire prevention page. And the next question, I believe, if we're going in order here, is can the homeowner call for a GFD inspection after the work is done? In other words, I believe what this means is we go by, we see a violation, and they get a letter that there's a violation. Can they call to have us come earlier than we said that we were going to be back there? The easy answer is on that letter of violation, there'll be that website or there'll be that email address. And if the compliance is done and they take pictures of it and email us over the proof of pictures, then 9 times out of 10, our inspectors are usually around in that area. And if they know that somebody has said, hey, we did the work, we just want to make sure that we're clear, here's the pictures that we took, then our inspectors can go by there within a week and just check and make sure that, check for compliance and go ahead and have it cleared. Because we have such a big area, we don't make initial appointments. I mean, it's literally 9,000 parcels and 2 inspectors. So the first bit of around, I mean, we do this by neighborhoods, but the ones that are having questions or need assistance or want to meet and discuss, that's when we get into more appointments. And it's probably realistically only about 10% of our community that we generally meet with multiple times, because the majority of them, by this point, they've already got our correspondence. They've done this now for about 3 years, because even though our program has been in place for 10, 15 years, it's only been under fire prevention for about the last 3 years. So it's been a lot more efficient, I guess you could say, on the inspection side. I did it when I was riding around in a fire engine. Now that's moved to an inspector actually walking to every place. So we have a lot more attention on it. Hopefully that answered that question, the number 4. The other one, is there a cost associated with the inspection? So we have a blanket cost no matter how many times we go out there, and that's $15 for everybody within the high fire hazard area. Other than that, there's no other costs associated, and we send all those bills out September, October, after we're completely done with the inspections. The lead time to call for an inspection was another question. As I mentioned, if there's some questions about a violation, if there is a specific nuisance or fire hazards, then we will make that a priority. And our inspectors can usually be out there within 3 days. If it's a medium emergency, then we'll send somebody out the same day. But for the most part, usually this is not an immediate threat, not immediate need. We section them out into neighborhoods, and we generally spend the next 2-3 months walking these neighborhoods. So if we need to go out there for some reason, then usually we can get out there within the next 3 days. But most time, between pictures and between communication, we essentially wait until we go back into that neighborhood for re-inspections on that.
So again, Battalion Chief, here is our concern. I have opened escrow on June 1st. I have a 30-day escrow. I have not done any kind of inspections on the defensible space on my home. But before I start doing any work, I want to get a fire department to tell me what it is necessary to do. Being that I'm in escrow, would you be able to, or the fire department, to come visit that specific house that I'm selling and tell me, hey, here is where you're wrong, here's what needs to be done. And then I complete that, send you the pictures, proof, and then ask you for a re-inspection. Would that be possible to initiate that first contact if I'm in escrow with the Glendale Fire Department?
Sure. The first thing we would do is we would go over the communication that we sent with the homeowner and ask if there's any questions. We probably do that over the phone because it's pretty detailed, and it's usually pretty easy to understand if you have a house that's typical house. Where there tends to be a lot of questions is when you have those houses with the big hillsides, and does that hillside belong to me? Does it belong to the city? Does it belong to my neighbor? I don't know. Those homes, we usually figure that out pretty quick while we're talking to the resident, and we can pull up their plot map. And sometimes they're, as you know, I mean, their property may go all the way down to the street, and they may not realize that they need to clear 20 feet from the street, or they may need to clear 100 feet from their neighbor's, living space, which happens to be across the wash. So for those, for sure, if it gets to that point, we meet the homeowner. We do that regularly. We also meet HOAs regularly and make sure that they know before they get the contractors out. We'll even talk to contractors and make sure that they know what our requirements are. What we don't get involved in is the competing interests when it comes to especially homeowners associations, when they may have a preference of one plant or one tree or how it's done. That's stuff we don't get into because that has nothing to do with fire prevention. We basically will tell them, hey, this is our requirements to clear you. How you choose to do it is up to the association or up to the homeowner. Because there are options. There are a lot of options, especially if you have a lot of stuff, a lot of old growth acacia or something that you need to make safe. There's definitely options for that. So the short answer is yes, we could definitely make appointments to come to the homeowners.
And the way that we set that appointment is through Victor Mary Peter at Glendale CA.gov, correct?
Yep. And every piece of correspondence will have that info on it.
Very good. Thank you very much. We can go forward.
Oh yeah, no problem. And typically if it's a person who's been living there for a couple of years, since I try not to move the inspectors around, we just lost the one great guy that we had for the last 3 years. They typically will email the inspector directly because they get to know them, the ones that are generally engaged and have questions. The VMP will get to us for sure, VMP email. How long does the inspection take? The $15 is definitely not, it's basically a blanket cost throughout the high fire hazard area, right? Has nothing to do with the amount of time that the inspector depends on the property, because there are some that, you know, you walk through and you can see right away that it's clear, and it's, you know, you have access around the whole property, and it may take you 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And then there are some that we go back and we go in their backyard and we help them, we flag it with them. We show them the plot map and explain that, yes, that hillside that goes, you know, 2 acres back there is actually yours. And yes, you do have to clear it. We'll work with them a lot at times, especially if it's the first time they realize that they had to clear and it hasn't been cleared in 15, 20 years. We'll try to make it safe. We'll even, you know, we have at times for the bigger HOAs, you know, we've stepped it for a couple years to get them to get to where we need to be defensible space-wise. So the inspection itself really depends on the property. If we have access and we can, you know, meet the homeowners there, a half hour would be probably on the long end of a typical home. But we've also met, you know, hours with some of these bigger projects. Will GFD provide a certificate of compliance to the homeowner after the association after the associated inspection? Oh, after the associated inspection. If there's compliance. Yes, I think I covered that through the PRR plus following up with the VMP email. We started doing it last year. We had a couple realtors probably ahead of the game, because I don't think it was enforced yet, or I don't think it was part of it, calling up and asking for the letter for home sales. And so we're pretty familiar with what to produce. And we've also produced a similar thing for different homeowners insurance. Sometimes we ask or request proof of compliance for our program. And then I mentioned this briefly, that the question was, what mapping system do we use to identify the high fire hazard zone or high fire hazard area? The two are really the same. So the state map, ready for wildfire.org is a good website, and it is referenced on ours, on our website. We also have the map on our website, but essentially it's a state map, approved state. It doesn't change a whole lot. There's been an anticipated change for the last couple of years. I don't think it will affect Glendale much. I don't think we'll go beyond that 9,000 parcels, because we're pretty, the ones outside of there are pretty isolated away from the urban interface. But it is a state map that we use, and it ties into our ordinance that allows us to enforce and compliance within those properties. And while we're talking about that, we get a lot of calls for hazards that are outside of the high fire hazard area, but they may have, you know, dead trees, they may have overgrown lawns. Usually these same ones may have some sort of public nuisance. Those, unfortunately, really don't fall under our jurisdiction. That really is more of a neighborhood services complaint and nuisance control. We only have jurisdiction per our ordinance in that high fire hazard area. Just a little sidetrack, but if we get it, we'll refer to the right people. But we're not allowed to do any sort of compliance outside of our high fire hazard zone. Do I know how many homes and properties are located in there? Talked about that, 9,000 plus. It's a lot of properties, and we do walk each one. 330 of those are city-owned properties that we inspect, and we also clear or manage the clearance of. Then we actually have what we refer to as a deck list, which ranges between, you know, about 400 parcels that are completely unimproved, that we have just taken it upon ourselves because the owners are either kind of non-involved, or they've gone multiple years without clearing it themselves, and we've placed it on a deck list where we actually go, we hire the county, we clear them, and then we charge the homeowners. And it's definitely not something that we want to get in the business of doing, but we know that the owners aren't involved with the brush clearance. Our contract with the county allows those those parcels to be cleared at a really reasonable price, cheaper than realistically they could probably hire somebody to do it. And we have a process in place for those to be approved by city council. We provide notification to the owners, and it's not something we would do for improved homes, but we are able to do that through city council approval for some of these unimproved lots. Because really the homeowners, a lot of these times, or the parcel owners, a lot of these times don't even live in the area and don't have a whole lot of ties to it. So we had to find a way to, get into a neighborhood and clear out these vacant lots annually without taking up a whole lot of time and energy, and being able to make sure that that neighborhood itself is compliant. I think those are the questions I got, Greg, that I answered. But I'm definitely open to any questions you guys may have or any clarifications.
Thank you so very much. This was tremendous, very, very helpful. Again, it's the VMP, which is Victor Mary Peter at glendaleca.gov is the most direct way for us to connect with you, and 3di.com, which I'm sure our members will check. Having said that, I'll pass this on to our president, Rick Bugnati, to take any questions that anybody else may have. Thank you so very much, Fire Marshal.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Fire Marshal. I see a raised hand. Ira Bland, you have a question?
Yes. By the way, that was an excellent presentation and very straightforward answers. Did I understand you to say that you send out those bills in the September, October after you've completed everything?
Yes, because there's such a high volume,
Right.
We'll send them all out at once, and we make sure that we're all the way done with it. So it's usually September, October.
So my question is, since you've already completed all the work, is there any way that that billing notice could include a statement that says they're in compliance with the law, and then they can retain that, and then they don't have to make a request for any other reports?
That's a good idea and a good question. The problem is, first of all, it's a third-party billing company that we use, and then also, regardless of whether or not they're in compliance at that point, they're still going to get a bill, because a lot of these we may still be working with. A handful of them we end up going to city enforced abatement. Very small amount, because most of our community is extremely compliant.
Right, but if they get the bill anyway and they're not in compliant, then they wouldn't have the statement that says that they are. But at least at that point in time, for that 1 year period, they satisfy the requirement. That's what I was thinking.
I don't know if we can manage it. We're actually in the middle of getting a new billing company, so it's definitely something I could look into. I like the idea. If there was any communication with us, and maybe I should have clarified, if we had any correspondence with them, in other words, there was, usually there's always some sort of, on our initial one, even if it's just mowing the lawn, there's some sort of correspondence. On completion, they will get a compliance letter. The ones that are completely clear, they won't get a compliance letter. And I'll look into seeing how we could possibly differentiate those when the bill comes, to let them know that they're in compliance.
It's appreciated, and it seems like it would save people time from having to go in and make requests and inundate staff and all that kind of stuff. And at least once a year, it's there. And certainly if they finally complete the work and they get their letter of compliance, that takes care of it. But it just seems like it's a natural thing to at least explore. Whether it's doable or not, only you guys will know.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. And they would get it in September or October. So then that would actually allow them to, if they hold on to that letter, allow them to keep that compliance until the next year. So,
all right,
really good suggestion.
Thank you, Ira. Thank you, our Fire Marshal. Any other questions? You can unmute yourself and ask if you have any other questions, please. Well, I don't see one. Thank you, Fire Marshal, for attending our meeting. This was a lot of good information, especially with the new form that we have to provide. And we appreciate you being here, and we look forward in the future to working with you. And also, if there are any other questions, we will ask you to come back and join us again.
Anytime.
So, thank you very much.